the back, the VOD and the silver screen. Kevin and Tom and Joe know all there is to know, from masterpieces to deep fried tacos. And if the movie sucks, you might hear them say, there's no telling where the guys will take you. Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, cause we already warned you. Better watch out, it's gonna ruin the plot. Real spoilers. Real spoilers. Real spoilers.
Broadcasting from the lush but not lavish studios located in the basement of the O'Keefe Institute for Advanced Film Snarkitude, this is Real Spoilers, episode 819, The Heretic.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Answering that age-old question,
Yeah?
what if a TED Talk was a horror movie?
Well, I did say, I was like, man, these guys are working through some stuff.
Yeah, that's yes, they are. So, but before we dig in, let's go around the table and everyone can introduce themselves.
This is Joe.
This is Kevin.
And this is Tom. Quick shameless plugs. Don't forget we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn. Wherever you find a podcast, you can find us. While you're there, be sure and follow us so you never miss an episode. Maybe leave us a review. That's super helpful and unusual.
Every once in a while.
You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@realspoilers. You can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/realspoilers, where for $5 a month you get all sorts of bonus content. We like you extra. Did you guys ever put out that one I did?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't look at
Don't look at me.
Was it that bad? You're like, oh.
No, it was great.
Like, we don't even know if we want them on the regular episodes anymore. It was that bad. Did you record any more? You're going to go through all the SNL films.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Gotta
we
get
haven't.
those
But you haven't
scheduled.
recorded.
Yeah.
No. Okay. I was just curious. Because there's one I'm waiting to see if you even know exists. So that's
okay.
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, I don't want to say. Now I'm worried about what it is.
You should be.
Oh,
They should be.
no.
So you can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/realspoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group. It's called the League of Show Sharers because we are hoping you will share an episode. So your friends, families, loved ones, the ones you're still talking to after Tuesday.
Oh, boy.
Will know that we exist. So people who were kind enough to share an episode last week include Tammy Lynn Powers Betts, Chris Valls, Tom Dowdy, Chris Magic Man, Gabriel Lugo, Travis Tewitt, Julianne Jordan, Ralph Tribble, Brendan McGuckin, Aaron Kyleman, Heather Sachs, Cinema Recall, Blake Vale, The Kryptonian Orphan, Dissect That Film, Ronnie Castle, James Install, Geek to Me Radio, In Session Film, Nostalgia Cast. I don't know how to say this one. It's her name is her Facebook name is at KDUSC.
Okay.
So there's no way to pronounce that. So
Welcome to the show, KD.
Gotta say letters. Thanks, Kadusk. Mike, and Oscar, The Film B, Colby Mack, Ryan Terry, and Matt Neglia. So thank you very much for supporting the show. It is greatly appreciated. And did I do all the things?
You did all the things.
I just did them out of order.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
There. We're done.
We did. We should say the Venom Bros found us. Like, yeah.
I'm just going to start titling every movie. This movie's worse than Venom.
Or Joker.
This is the Venom of the Netflix genre.
I was like, why do our YouTube comments smell like Axe body spray? Oh, Venom.
And they wear Affliction t-shirts.
Yes, still.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's
Tap out?
on Sundays they wear tap out.
Okay.
You're right. I'm
For-
sorry. You're
for
right.
church.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
I mean, you wear the nice ones.
They don't go to church.
Right.
But they don't like you if you don't believe in Jesus.
kind of like this
Right.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Heretic.
Okay, so first I just want to say, every time I saw Hugh Grant on screen, I was like, he looks like Christopher Reeve. Like
that's
I was
interesting.
like, I mean,
see that a
Christopher
little
Reeve would look like this at this point. Like he's old, definitely.
Well,
would be
no, I'm
older.
pretty sure he's probably decomposed by
That's
now.
fair. By
Like,
now, yes, that's true. But I had just
I mean,
watched.
embalming has come a long way, but I don't know that it
well,
would last
it was
this
stuffed.
long. Yeah.
You see.
Maybe he was resurrected.
I mean, he is Superman.
Is-
But I did just watch that doc.
How is it? We were just talking about that.
incredible.
Okay,
It's
I really
absolutely
want,
incredible.
It's $15 on sale. I was thinking about grabbing it.
Totally worth it.
Really good?
Yeah,
Okay.
that one and the John Williams one. I think that's on Max.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Is also incredible.
Pet peeve about documentaries lately.
Yeah.
Is documentaries are really just turning into celebrity documentaries.
Yeah.
Like you're getting less and less true docs and more of these. And look, some of them are really good and very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not against that, but it's like, because everything is SEO and algorithm driven, they're like, well, if we make it about something somebody already knows about, instead of making it about something that maybe you should know about,
Sure.
right? Which is what docs have always kind of been in the past. So, like, I'm glad that they exist, but I just wish that they seem to be existing to the exclusion of more traditional documentaries, which I find a little frustrating.
It feels like Celebrity and True Crime are the two documentaries. Like, I just was when I was looking for that Netflix movie last week, and I was like, "There's another Zodiac documentary." Like, all right,
I'm guilty of it.
I'm gonna watch it.
It's so easy to just sit there and watch true crime.
Yeah,
because it's an inherent drama baked in. But like I do find myself sometimes I'm like, no, I have to not go down this road like 9 times in a row.
That one about the guy with the neck bomb was really interesting.
I mean, there's some great ones. Yeah, for sure.
But the thing is, too, it's a lot easier to make films. The barrier of entry is so much lower now, so you're getting more. I think there's still a lot of great documentaries out there that are more independent and smaller scale, but when you're getting something that shows up on Max or Disney, obviously it's going to be Taylor Swift.
The 30 for 30s were fantastic. I missed those a
lot.
I
watched some of those.
Yeah, those were really good.
Yeah.
Depending on what you
well, sports docs
are
kind of like true crime, right? There's an inherent drama baked in. Is this team going to win? Is this athlete going to make a comeback? What have you?
Right.
Like, it's kind of you don't have to like craft. The story's already kind of been written for you, so it's just about telling it. In a way that maybe a more traditional.
Absolutely,
not so
absolutely.
Much. Yeah.
So this movie is Heretic, written by Scott Beck and Bryan Woods. These are the guys that wrote A Quiet Place.
Yes,
and you can tell that they were like, they just did a movie where nobody talked.
Now we're gonna let everybody talk,
and now we're gonna do nothing but talk.
I love it. I love movies that are contemplative and thoughtful. This reminds me a lot of that one with the school shooting and the 2 couples and the
I see
or whatever.
That.
I love movies.
Is that the one with the gal from Scream? Is that the one you're talking about?
Oh my goodness, who was in it? It was is it
the little sister from Scream? Jenna Ortega?
No,
it was 2 adult families that lost their child. A school shooting. It was the parents of the victim and the parents of the shooter.
Okay,
and they got together and talked, and it was phenomenal performances. But it's all just a chamber piece with them talking.
I mean, it could be a stage play. Like the entire movie is literally just them sitting at a table, and it's like the parents of the kid who did the shooting and the parents of one of the kids who was shot and killed.
Okay.
So, and this movie is very similar. I mean, you could do the same thing with it. Obviously, you could build a little bit of sets, but for the most part, it takes place in 2 rooms. And mostly in 1 room with them talking. And so, I love movies like this that are simple, but they have such good dialogue and they're thought provoking. And the subject of religion is so interesting because of the way that it is used to control and manipulate, and Hugh Grant's character brings up a lot of really good points.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because he brings up the points that I think are always argued when it comes to religion, where Sophie Thatcher's character.
Just to back up, the movie Kevin and I are talking about is called Mass.
Mass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Man, it's phenomenal.
It's really good. I mean, it's a gut punch.
Jason
of a movie.
Isaacs is one of the dads. Dads of the victim.
Yeah, Jason Isaacs, Martha Plimpton, Ann Dowd, who is on Handmaid's Tale.
Oh yeah, okay.
She's like the one old lady nun type that's really mean.
Isn't she
Lydia?
Wasn't she in The Exorcist?
Think.
Wasn't she like the gal that she was like very anti?
I think.
Whatever, and then all of a
yeah.
sudden she was like, "By the way, I'm great."
Yeah. And Reed Birney.
Okay.
But it's really good.
Phenomenal.
And then the movie you were talking about with Jenna Ortega is called The Fallout.
Okay.
Fallout.
But we did that. We covered.
did.
Yeah. Sophie Thatcher's character gives all of the arguments that you always hear on the flip side.
Yeah.
Right.
So it is what I think I was a huge fan of this movie. I thought it was I thought everybody was involved was great. It's a shame that the Academy shits on horror movies the way that it does. Because I do think Hugh Grant should get
this performance.
He
is
should get a
phenomenal.
nomination.
This is one of the best things I've ever seen Hugh Grant. This is such a Hugh Grant renaissance. With him coming back and doing The Gentleman and these more comedic roles and just firing on all cylinders. And he is giving a performance. I mean, this isn't just a rom-com performance that she was, so good in back in the day, but like this is a meaty performance, and I think what he's doing is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that there's gonna have to come a point when the Academy starts looking at, I think of Toni Collette and Hereditary, and it's like, how do you not at least give her a nomination for that?
Horror they are the best movies coming out.
They are, because I think they have more freedom.
Well,
I think they have more freedom to tell different stories and to take
lower
chances.
Budget. They're less risky.
The stakes are lower.
Stakes are much
not,
lower.
Not just financially, although they are, but also creatively. Like because expectations are lower, they can take risks maybe in a way that other movies can't.
Well, I also think with horror movies, you can tell so many different stories. It doesn't, I think...
It's like sci-fi in that regard.
Exactly.
Before sci-fi just became big giant action movies.
Yes.
But when
It's
sci-fi...
like 2001.
Yeah, but when sci-fi... especially sci-fi novels back in the day...
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot of crap out there, but there were a lot of people doing very different things, telling different kinds of stories, in a way that you don't
Isaac
get...
Asimov stuff.
Yeah,
Well, it's like, I think that people tend to forget that you can mess around with science. Like science fiction. Like it doesn't have to be an alien. It could be any sort of like, and I think that's where we are with horror is like, you don't have to, in the 80s, people were just doing slashers.
Right.
That's because that's what was working. And then, it was the torture porn, and then it was the James Wan ghost stuff. And now it feels like those doors have been kicked open, and you can tell anything you want.
A24.
Is that what this is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just there. I hate to be like A24 fanboy, but rarely does A24 miss. They have such a formula, and again, not even the movies that they produce, but the movies they buy. Like
I was gonna say,
everything
it's
feels like an A24.
I was gonna say it's hard to call it a formula because so many of these movies they're not making,
Right.
they're acquiring, and then putting their stamp and distribution model on.
But they only choose the ones that fit the A24
For
bill,
sure.
which is really these thought-provoking, atmospheric, contemplative movies. Like an A24 movie isn't just a slasher movie.
No.
You're not just getting
You're not getting Terrifier.
but you get stuff like even like Bodies that is funny and thrilling, but it still has a message, and it's like there's always so much to chew on in these films.
Well, I think we talked about it in the thread where we talk about, a movie like Terrifier makes $50 million on a minuscule budget.
That's your slasher,
but
right?
That's
your modern slasher.
But we're talking about money, right? And even a movie like that should not be making that kind of money,
right?
Is making,
But people go to the theater for horror.
Yeah.
Big action movies, which people are getting sick of, and they're a dime a dozen. They're on Netflix and all this stuff, but they will not skip the theater for horror. That environment and a big screen with good sound that will scare you, a crowd, it's just, there's nothing like it.
I think that with horror fans and films, you need to have some sort of a hook to get them into the theater. I don't think horror fans will just show up. You know what I mean? Like if we're saying that what's the Halloween guy, not John Carpenter, your Highness,
David Gordon Green.
David Gordon, Rob Zombie. If they're like the new David Gordon Green horror movies coming out, nobody's showing up.
I don't know.
Nor should they.
Nor should they. But I don't know. This movie doesn't really have. Hugh Grant in a horror movie is not a ticket seller.
I do think
theoretically.
Sophie Thatcher is about to explode.
Okay.
Because she's on Yellow Jackets, or
Okay.
she was. I don't know if that's over.
I don't think so.
I heard season 2 is pretty bad, so maybe it is.
Oh, season 1 is
Season 1 is
amazing.
great. I haven't gotten around to season 2.
Same.
It's
heard
funny
nothing but
because
bad things.
I was watching this movie and the whole time I'd seen Yellow Jackets, but I forgot she was on it.
Yeah.
And I was
didn't,
like,
yeah.
is she Juliette Lewis's daughter? Because she sounds so much
That's
like
funny.
her. Her
Yeah.
voice, especially when
Because she's the young Juliette Lewis, right?
right. She
Yeah.
plays
Yeah.
the young
That makes
Juliette
sense.
Lewis.
She was
and-
probably filming simultaneously
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
that had
but
that,
when she talks, especially when she gets scared and kind of meek, I was like, she sounded so much like Juliette Lewis in Cape Fear.
Oh, sure.
And I was just like, are they related? And then I look it up after and I was like, oh,
That's
well,
what's up.
There it
that,
is.
That makes
But
sense.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything inherently, I don't think Sophie Thatcher is a ticket seller. I don't think Hugh Grant in a horror movie is a ticket seller.
Fair.
Agreed.
I think this is an A24 horror movie,
Topher
and
Grace.
people show up. I didn't realize until he went to the house. I go, is that Topher Grace?
When he was in the church, and I'm looking, I was like, man, that guy looks
why
like
do I know
Topher
this
Grace.
I know. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't know who this is. And when he's at the house, and I don't know, whatever his face was.
To me, it's when he talked. I was
and
like,
he has a hat on or something, so I just saw his face, and I'm like, oh, okay. He took a break from editing Star Wars trilogies.
and
and
get it, do it, you know.
But
I think it's also I think it's an intriguing concept.
Yeah.
It is.
And it pulled people in.
Which
you
is
know?
great.
I think religious horror always kind of has a different hook to it. I know that
I love that this doesn't revolve around. I'm so sick of the nunsploitation, whatever we want to call.
everybody
that.
keeps saying that. There's been one movie.
No. They've kept. There's been multiple movies that have revolved around convents and churches and have nuns in them. And it's like, I don't want every movie to be like, oh, and then God, the angel came down and blah. I'm so sick of that.
It was just
crap.
immaculate.
No, but no, there was the Nun. There was the sequel to the Nun.
There's none.
So like to me, those don't
The
count.
Omen is around a
Okay,
church,
I'll give you
right?
the Omen.
But they
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kept coming out. And it's like, I'm so sick of it. First of all, I'm not religious. I wasn't raised religious. I don't mind watching one, but it's like when these horror movies and the whole movie is like, oh, Father, blah blah blah, and they go into the church. But I'm like, who cares?
me-
I don't
to
care
me,
about it.
Was one of the Nun movies that Conjuring prequel? Were
there
those
was
Nun movies?
So both nun movies
Yeah.
are
where we
Conjuring
thought
prequels.
it was gonna mesh up with the origin story of,
It should have.
and it didn't.
It didn't.
But it felt
Yeah.
felt like that's
Where
what
we
they
were like, wait, you cast Vera Farmiga's sister
Right.
as a different
Were
character?
those
She's not.
Nun movies? Were
Yeah.
those the Nun?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And to me, those don't count as like they're.
If
they
it
have
takes
nuns
place
in
in
it.
a church and there's nuns,
But
and
it's
they're
not-
talking about God and demons and blah blah blah, and then the scary part is a demon, whatever. I'm like, I don't give two fucks about this.
But
But
do you-
this
so you-
movie is interesting because it's real world humans belief. It's so thought provoking, and it's such an issue that we deal with because you have half the country, or at least purporting to do things based on religion and following this stuff. But do you even believe what you're saying? Do you actually believe this? Well, then, if you have faith in this, will you do this then? Because you believe, right?
I think that's-
I mean, there is so much to chew on in this movie, and I love it. It's
What
so
I-
relevant.
What I think is great is you've got these two characters. You've got Sophie Thatcher and then the other gal.
Let's look up her
Is
name.
it Chloe? So Chloe something?
Chloe East.
Chloe
There's
East.
3 people in this movie.
Yeah,
Hugh
right.
Grant, Sophie
There's
Thatcher, Chloe
4
East,
and Topher Grace.
and introducing Topher,
Topher Grace. So you've got Sophie Thatcher, who is definitely not a believer. Like, I think she believes it to an extent, but it definitely feels like this is a business for her, is getting these, they talk
Well,
about.
I think she's questioning her faith. I think
when
she's
she
like-
has birth control, like that's.
They're Mormons. They're
Mhm.
we should start. They're missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Do they send girls out for that? I thought that was a boy thing.
That was my first question. I'm
I don't
guessing that's a
know.
more modern thing, and I don't think they would do it if that was not a real thing. But my same thought was, you always see we've seen Book of Mormon. It's always
She does
guys.
also have. I mean, Chloe, the other girl
East?
says, Chloe East says your wife has to be in the room with
Mhm.
us. So I do wonder if there
It's
is
probably a more modern thing to get people more interested in the church because there's probably less men doing it or something. And they need to have the women
Yeah.
come in. And but I thought the same thing. I'm like, I've never seen that or heard of that. But
right.
They do. They can be male or female.
there you
Okay.
go.
So
Ding dong.
And so you've got Chloe East, who is in, right? Like she is in all the way. Also, the chemistry.
But she also watches porn and stuff and then tries to hide. I think she's also like, I know
I think
she's
she's
energetic, but I don't think she's all in, like, because that would probably be very much against their religion.
from just a quick Googling, it looks like it's essentially mandatory for boys but optional for
Oh, okay.
girls.
Okay.
So, and I took the porn thing is like she still lives in the real world and
Yeah.
you're gonna see things.
Right.
And so she's seeing them but trying to process it through her
religious
Christian beliefs.
Yep. But I think the chemistry between them is amazing.
they're great.
I thought
Yeah.
they were great
All the
together.
performances
Like they're
are-
very
yeah.
funny together where they're talking about porn.
Yeah.
And she keeps calling it like pornography. or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pornography. And like Sophie Thatcher's just like, what
No,
are you
I'm
talking
not a
about?
pornographer watcher. Whatever. Yeah, I'm telling you, the writing in this movie is really good.
It is really
And it
good.
Yeah,
keeps
no,
you-
I know I made fun of the movie being a TED Talk, but it is really good. I enjoyed
It's-
this movie. I don't think when we get there, I don't think it quite sticks the landing.
I don't think it does either.
That's the problem. I'm not quite sure, but the ride is really good.
Yeah,
thought provoking.
to get there is very good.
Yeah.
It does. We'll just kind of spoil it a little bit. It feels kind of like a Sherlock Holmes, like those Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, where one character starts breaking it down, and it's just like.
Yeah, I don't know how she came to all those conclusions. It was very.
Well, I think it's Sophie. The way the movie sets everybody up, character-wise, Sophie Thatcher's the one that
maybe could have
it, but
come
like,
to.
but like
yeah.
it would have figured everything out.
Yeah,
you know,
the other one seems a little bit more naive and everything, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So they have a list of people they have to go visit, and we see obviously these Mormons are made fun of, and people, the other girls are taking selfies with them, but then they pull down her Chloe's underwear.
Her dress.
I want to see your magic underwear and all
underwear
this stuff, and so that really is embarrassing to her. So you see how they're treated and ostracized, and no one wants to stop and talk to them because that's very realistic.
They don't want to get the lecture.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so their last stop, they've been on their bikes going miles and miles and miles, and their last stop during the bad weather and everything is to Hugh Grant's house.
Yes, and Hugh Grant opens the door, and he does a very
Mr. Reed.
Mr.
Reed.
All I could think about was like in Liar Liar, like there's a whole gimmick with the name Mr. Reed.
Oh, that's funny.
But so when they get there, Hugh Grant, the way he plays it is he automatically, to me, I'm already getting I'm supposed to, but like I'm already getting weird vibes.
But you know that you're supposed to.
That's
right?
correct.
Like you
You
know
hadn't seen any trailers.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
anything.
Yeah, and I like Hugh Grant in this role in that he's kind of weaponizing his charm.
Yes.
Like you understand why these girls are pulled in to this world when every decision they make is a bad one. But you get, and also, a lot of this movie is not just about religion, it's also about how women are socialized, right? Like it's like, well, you don't want to be rude and you don't want to and so they end up in this situation because they're trying to not offend someone whose opinion shouldn't matter to them at all.
I feel like Sophie Turner's character doesn't have a problem offending him. Like she does have like kind of like a punk rock.
Sophie Turner isn't in this movie.
Sorry, Sophie Thatcher. Yeah. That's a different person.
Mm-hmm.
Not Sansa Stark is not in this movie. Sophie Thatcher's character does not have a problem standing up to him and kind of pushing
to a degree.
Yeah.
And especially the deeper we get into the movie,
yes,
she's like, this guy's trash,
yep.
and she doesn't care.
But she also kind of does have like a punk rock kind of a Mormon punk rock kind of look to her.
A goth kind of vibe.
She's all in black. Her hair is black. She's kind of got like a bob haircut, where her partner is dressed more, conservatively, where it's like a white button down and like a long skirt, and she's got her hair in like a braid. But I do like when we get to the end that the way she looks kind of reflects. It's almost like John McClane, where like he gets worse and worse.
Ready or Not.
Exactly like Ready or Not. Yeah. So I do think that Sophie Thatcher's character doesn't have a problem, which is probably when we find out kind of her backstory makes sense. Is that she wasn't born in the church. She wasn't raised in the church. Like her mom married this guy who was in the church. So she's like, I just kind of went along with it.
Yeah. I got the vibe, reading between the lines
A little bit
that tough life.
Yep.
And they meet this guy, and he's religious, and life stabilizes. So she's just like, okay, then.
And then Dad,
my life has gotten better. I will go down this road with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then that guy has Lou Gehrig's disease.
Yeah.
And he's gone. And now I think Sophie Thatcher's character also has a crisis of faith, where she's just like, if you're this being, and then, Hugh Grant's character touches on this, where he's just like, if your God is so good, how does he let something like this happen? And that's an argument that people make all
really
the time.
Interesting how
it's also like a
cheap argument.
It's a pretty rudimentary, simple religious argument.
Absolutely.
Of like, but bad stuff so
happens
when?
to good people,
like, right? And I say this is somebody who's not religious in any way, shape, or form, but it's kind of just like
I remember so I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school my entire life.
I was not Catholic, but it just giving background so people know where we're coming from.
Oh, sure.
I'm not Catholic, but I went to Catholic schools from 5th grade through high school. So like I am very familiar with the teachings of the Catholic Church. I know the handshake.
hey,
Yeah.
so you just jerk people off,
Right. Well,
Yeah, okay.
priests.
Perfect. Yes,
So
with your mouth. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, I remember getting to a point when I was probably, so I was in the church from the time I was in preschool until I was in high school. And I remember, like, I was like 13 or like 12 or 13, and I was just like, this is all bullshit. Like, all of, you start questioning it. It's good. Why do good things if you're supposed to be this great thing? Why do whatever? I had someone commit suicide when I was a kid, a friend of ours, and then the priest who they brought all of us back together, and then the priest was like, oh no, she's in hell. And I remember sitting there being like, what the fuck are you talking about? And that was it. I was like, I'm done. My dad, this is actually, we used to go to church every Sunday. And there was one Sunday where he's like, hey, are you getting up? And I was like, no. And he goes, well, then you're grounded. And I was like, okay.
Wow,
and my parents were just like, well, we've lost. Nope.
Yeah.
If the grounding, if he doesn't care about being, what's the point?
Yeah.
And I never went back.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, but this movie, so Hugh Grant's character lures them in, and he is very charming.
Yeah.
He says, come in and get out of the rain. They're like, we can't be there unless a woman is present. Do you have a roommate? And he's like, a roommate? He's like, oh, my wife is here. Oh, great. Okay, we'd love to meet her. And he lures them in, but he keeps delaying and delaying. Oh, she's making blueberry pie. Can you smell that? And so.
What I think is great about that scene is they start talking, and then he starts like engaging them in like a higher level of discussion about the Mormon church. And he walks over with the Book of Mormon. He's got it all tagged and stuff. And they're like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, you know more than we do.
Right.
So he's clearly studied religion. He contacted the church and said he wanted to learn more information, but he's very knowledgeable and he wants to question them about the religion. He has some very pressing questions. And as it goes on, they get more not intimate, they get more
intense.
Yeah, exactly. But I like that he keeps leaving the room and they keep picking up on these little clues and something doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah.
And so, when one of them picks up the candle and turns it around, it's like, oh, blueberry pie scented candle. And he keeps telling them things and they keep believing them, which obviously ties into the whole thing about belief. What do you want to believe? And then also to Tom's point, I love what this says about how the lengths people will go to be polite and not offend.
Didn't we see something that was kind of similar to this, where it was like, if they just weren't polite,
I think
like they would have gotten out of like
recently.
a situation?
Yeah.
Barbarian, maybe?
No, something way more recently than that.
Definitely Barbarian.
Yeah, but there was something way more recently because we did just talk about this.
She's in that Barbarian though.
Really?
Sophie Thatcher.
Oh, nice.
In that new Jack Quaid flick.
Okay.
By the people that did Barbarian.
So something's not right. They can totally tell it's off. She's like, look at the candle. It's blueberry pie scented. And, obviously the wife is not showing up. And they're like, we got to get out of here.
Well, there's a great line that I think they both miss, but I didn't, where I would call him Hugh Jackman. Hugh Grant says, hey, just so you know, there's metal in the walls.
Yeah.
I hope that's okay.
I had no idea what that
meant. And they
meant.
both were just like, okay. And didn't totally glossed over
it was
it.
A religious thing. I could not tell what
as
that
soon as he
meant.
said that, I was like, your cell phones aren't going to work. Like, that's exactly where we're at. Is there's something we know from the trailer that you're a creep, but when he's like, there's metal in the walls, it's like, well,
clearly there was something.
Yeah, right.
I did like that. I like the writing of that because it's like he clearly knows they're lying at that point. That's how he gets them. And, we got a call from our elder and we got to get back. And he's like, you don't have to lie. It's like, if you need to go, you can go. And they're like, well, no, we got a call. And he's like, no, I asked if there's metal in the walls and you said, okay, you didn't get a call. But he's so polite and charming, which is so disconcerting at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you can't quite figure him out because you're like, well, he's not he doesn't seem to be lying and he's so upfront. And he's like, you can leave, but the way to leave is down through the dungeon.
I also think it was I know enough. I don't know a lot about Mormonism. I do know that they don't really drink caffeine. So when he walks out with those
but
two...
I think Coke has some kind of donates to the church or something.
Oh.
So I've heard that too. They couldn't drink caffeine, but then apparently Coke products are okay.
That's funny.
Because they don't... There's something like that.
But
I was confused too.
I thought when he walked out...
He purposefully brought them Coke.
And neither one of them take it. Neither one of them drink it. And I was like, that was a test.
Yeah.
Like, that was a test of, like, their
again,
faith.
just a quick Google. Yes, Mormons can drink caffeinated sodas like Coca-Cola, according to the church's official doctrine. In 2012, the church released a statement that caffeinated sodas are permitted and that the church's health practices revelation doesn't mention caffeine. However, many Mormons still avoid caffeinated drinks. The word of wisdom, which provides guidance from God, does forbid hot drinks, which the church leaders have interpreted to mean avoiding coffee and tea.
Oh.
However, the word of wisdom doesn't extend this prohibition to all caffeinated products.
So when they used to come visit us and go door to door, and they came in, we'd offer them a soda. We'd always give them Sprite because they wouldn't drink caffeine. I remember that from when I was a kid.
Really?
And it sounds like this is a relatively recent change. It says 2012, so I think
they used to avoid all caffeine.
it used to be all caffeine.
That's what I
there's
thought.
been an adjustment of sorts, and so now it's more they don't drink
Interesting
coffee.
iterations.
Yes.
See, how,
But I did think it was.
changes.
I did think that he, when I saw the sodas come out,
Clearly,
and
it
I
was
like,
brought
that is
out to see how
absolutely-
hardcore Mormon they are.
and neither one of them touch it.
Because I noticed that too, because I knew they didn't at least used
Well,
to.
and I took it as they weren't drinking it not because of caffeine, but because
They didn't know.
they didn't know. At this point, they're skeptical of the guy, and he brought them a drink that they didn't see poured from,
That's true.
from a sealed container.
And they
That's
say
interesting.
that. And so I like that it's kind of, I think it has two meanings there because you're looking like, oh, clearly that's Coke. It's in a Coke glass. It's dark. It's, but then they're like, oh, no, we're not thirsty.
Right.
And she speaks for both of them.
Yeah. So Sophie Thatcher. So it's because the other character is kind of naive. Sister Bennett, is that her name?
I'm guessing Barnes, Sophie
It's-
Thatcher, and Paxton.
Paxton is the cutesy one,
Yes.
and Barnes is the goth.
yeah.
Okay.
I do think that Paxton is a little naive.
Oh, she's
and,
very
and
naive,
Barnes is like not.
Yeah.
To the and I do like that they're hinting around all kinds of stuff. You see, initially I thought they showed like a scar on Barnes's arm, and I was like, oh, it's
Makes
self.
a lot more
I
sense
thought
than
I thought it was self harm,
of
and I was like,
course,
that's where we're
I thought it was in a weird spot for that, but I took it as cutting, just like
that's exactly what I thought.
me too. So I think that's interesting, and it alludes back to how he knew and everything, because like, oh, there's a scar there.
Yeah, and I was a little worried when we get to us when
But you don't. What is the scar from? I thought it was from cutting.
it was
No, it's
from
putting
the
that
birth control
device
implant.
in, and he
You don't
went
get
in.
a scar from
That's-
that, do you?
I'm sure they have to cut you open.
And I thought it went in your shoulder.
Well, he pulled it out of her arm. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where it was.
Yeah, so
no,
my-
it wasn't your. Well, either way, at least in that case,
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
So when we get the
Otherwise, he wouldn't. I mean, he went and cut her open right there in the arm, and then
Because
pulled
I mean,
it
I
out.
would. Yeah, I just thought I just can't imagine that it would leave a scar. Birth control would leave a scar that big because most women don't want
Sure.
to have scars.
Right.
Plus, it would be like it would be like this major advertisement of like I'm on birth control that people might not want the world to know.
That's
might
fair.
have been exacerbated because of the movie, like to give you a visual cue. So
Right.
there's probably something
Well,
like that. But
I
get what
was
you're saying.
worried when I'm just gonna say when Hugh Grant goes to cut it out, and he's like, "Oh, look, this is a tracking device, and none of this is real." And I was like, "Don't." That was that one moment where I was like, "Please don't tell me that this is all like virtual
Oh,
reality or
if
something."
he woke up
yeah.
on a fucking sailboat with Matthew McConaughey, I swear it would have been the really
But
good
that's-
movie. Would
I
have
mean,
gone
like the
so
way
wrong.
he was,
Throwback.
like, the way he was talking, I was like, "Please don't tell me that this was all a simulation and none of these things are real."
But
and
that's
like,
another theory that people believe in. You know what I
Oh,
mean? So
yeah.
it's interesting. But to get there, so things are creepy. They're like, we got to go. And then they get to the front door, and she's like, crap, our bikes are locked up, and he's got our coats.
Yep, but they can't get the door open. Now they're trying to get the door open.
Now
and
they're like,
there's no
screw it, we'll
lock.
walk 4 miles.
Right.
And then it won't open.
There's no lock.
Can you fit through the window? They're frantic.
I do like she's Paxton, I think, is just like, no, I can't fit through that window. But then,
Yeah, it's a callback.
yeah, it's a little
So
bit.
so the lights turn off. They're on a timer. It's very creepy. Things keep happening where they're just like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So they walk down this dark hallway that Mr. Reed walked by, and there's some creepy
I
silhouettes
gotta tell you,
in the
that
hallway.
one was good. Like
That was
the
good.
statue was good, and it was kind of reminiscent. Did you ever see those? I think it may have been in one
Night
of
at
the
the
Exorcist.
museum.
Yeah, right. Also, I gotta tell you, creepy. I work in a place where I have to walk through. I had to. I don't have to anymore.
You have a big flashlight.
I have a no, actually, it's like a little one, but
Oh, you have a
it's big enough that I put it in my fist. I'm gonna knock you out with
Right.
it. But there would be like statues and like and sometimes all you can see is a silhouette, and
Yeah,
you're
that's
like,
creepy.
I don't like this at all.
That is creepy. So they go by, and it's like Play-Doh or something. He's got statues all over the place. And they walk into his study, which basically looks like a church. It's like an altar, and there's books, and there's pews, and, things that all look like that. They're like, oh, my God, you've got your own church and all this stuff. And this is when stuff hits the fan. This is what it comes down to is he's like, or they're like, we gotta go, we gotta call, and that's when he's like, no, you didn't. Like, what? No, we did. And he's like, I told you there's metal in the walls.
But
And
he also
you don't have to lie to me. He's like so friendly and charming, but he's like, no, you're lying, but it's okay, you don't have
But
to.
he also says, well, you walked around you saw my house, right? And they were like, yeah. And he's like, so you know the only other way out of here is through. You should know that, right? And they're like,
well, basically they're like, we'd really like you to open the door. We couldn't get out earlier. It's stuck. And he's like, oh no, yeah, that won't open till morning. And they're like, what? And he's like, well, I've got it on a timer and I should have set the little latch, but I didn't. The only part I don't like about this is he lied there. I wish he would have went through the whole movie not lying.
Agreed.
Because that kind of ruins the whole thing, because it's like he's friendly and he's like, you can leave whenever you want, but it's through the back. Like, he's telling lies that are manipulative, but
they're not technically lies.
Right, they're white lies, not
Right.
white lies. But you know what I mean? He's like saying it, but it's like a riddle, you know? It's like, you can leave whatever you want. If you crawl through the dungeon and you die and you come back in the afterlife, you know? So I wish he didn't say, oh, I can't, because then they could have just cut out Topher Grace's character. He doesn't save them. He doesn't hint. What does he do? What does that character do?
I think
to me it was almost like a mystery in terms of like it's a red herring.
Yeah.
Because there are a couple red herrings. Like I thought when they're locking up the bikes, this is going to be an issue when it comes time to run away.
That was good.
How hard it's going to be to get these bikes unlocked, and it never becomes a plot point at all
but it is a plot point.
Well,
that's what's great is they come
use
back
the
to
lock,
it.
the lock in a different way, but I thought it was going to be like, how are they going to get these?
But you were
bikes?
supposed to be like, oh my god, he's going to see the bikes.
That's
and
what
I
thought.
And he comes back to the door and then leaves again through the gate, and you see there's no bikes tied up.
Yeah.
So this movie again is so well written, the way that things don't just go away. It's like, whoa, that came back. But my point is like, that character you could have cut out of the movie. I know it led to a little suspense at the door, but other than that, he doesn't save them. He doesn't come back and save the day where you forget about him or anything like that.
What I do like.
So my point is that you wouldn't have seen him open the door for Topher Grace. Then you wouldn't have known that he could open the door, and that would have like not even been an issue. He could have said, "Oh, it's on a timer," and it could have been, and he could have never opened it.
Right.
So I hate that only for the fact that it makes him lie, and we know he lied, and so then you're like, well, what else is he lying about? I would have liked that character to have been so studied and just trying to do this intellectual study and religious discussion, and been like, no, you can leave, but again, it's a crazy complicated way. But like, I just wish everything he said wouldn't be questioned.
Sure.
And now you do because of the lock situation.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that having Topher Grace come to the front, I mean, he would have seen them on the first time he walked up. He would have seen the bikes the first time. And then when he comes back and you're like, yeah, okay, like these girls are going to be all right. And then he's just like, here's a pamphlet. And he's like, oh, thanks.
It was a good moment, but again,
you're right,
it just undermines, and not that they couldn't have done it a different way, but showing him unlock the door after saying, I can't unlock the door, then makes you question
everything.
Yeah, exactly, that he says. And so it was just a little nitpick there, but I mean, it was a good scene.
Right. So the girls are in this, and now this is
he puts on this presentation. There's religious studies. This whole place is covered in books and notes and scribbled stuff everywhere.
Well, he
paintings
starts with the song. And I think this is
I love this part. I
think this was great
when he talks about people stealing from other things and making it their own and the originals. I just thought
what
it
I actually
was fantastic.
and we talk about it sometimes is when they make timely references to things. It's kind of like, well, now you're kind of like dating your movie.
Yeah,
I do think this one does make timely references, but it's references that don't.
Like which ones?
Well, when he talks about Lana Del Rey, like that is a fairly new thing,
right? But the Hollies is a fairly old song.
It shows you how
that's what I'm
old
saying.
It went
is
to
like
current.
Referencing Lana Del Rey in this moment is a time capsule, kind of, but it is in the grand scheme of things,
you see
it's
the
whole picture, right?
Exactly.
And there's something else that.
It's Monopoly. I thought that was
the
fantastic.
Monopoly one.
Where he's
I thought
like,
was pretty
the
good.
Landlord's game.
Yeah.
And so he basically goes on this whole rant, and I can't remember if it's before or after, but he does a presentation.
He's playing the Hollies.
He does the Holly song first, and then he does because the board game monologue comes a lot later into the film.
Yeah, because he lays out the three.
So he plays it again, and he's like, "Oh, have you ever heard this song?" And they're like, "You just played it," and it's just really creepy. And you're like, "What the hell is this guy doing?"
Yeah,
well, you just played it. He's like, "No, sure, you've heard it. Radiohead creep." And then he does this really like bad sing, but it's funny, and it's just like, "I'm a creep, I'm a loser."
But he's like the Hollies sued Radiohead. And he's like, and then Lana Del Rey Radiohead sued Lana Del Rey for the same thing.
And it's like you keep it's all about iterations, and then so he goes to the religious presentation.
He starts with the Book of Judaism, the Bible, and the Quran. And then and that's when he talks about
the Torah.
The Torah, sorry. Yeah. The Quran comes later.
But I mean, it's not called the Book of Jesus. The Torah.
Oh yeah.
The
You're
Torah,
right.
the Bible, and the Quran.
Yeah. But then he talks about Monopoly. He's like, everybody knows this game. And then he shows the Landlord. Or
the Landlord's game.
The Landlord's
He's like,
game.
this isn't created, let's just say, in like 1916 by this woman, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, some door-to-door, I don't know, vacuum salesman or whatever she says, comes and sees the game. And then all of a sudden, they've got Monopoly and they're selling it to Parker Brothers. This person died poor and no one knows them. And of course, Monopoly, now you have this electronic banking version.
Oh,
blah,
yeah.
blah. But he's like, it's iterations. So you got the 3 Bibles and the 3 games. He's like, these are all iterations, stealing from each other. But like, what is the original? And look, now the original accounts for, I think there's like 0.6% of the population is Jewish. And so it's like, why is the original not the most popular? It has the most time. But he's like, because they don't advertise.
Marketing.
They don't go door to door. And so you've got you've got electronic banking Monopoly and all this stuff. But then like the Landlord's game, no one even knows what that is. So I love his comparison
Fun fact,
there.
the Landlord's game was designed for everyone to lose because it was designed to show you how corrupt capitalism is. And then instead it gets completely flipped into this game that's supposed to be about how great capitalism is.
That's funny.
Well, to be fair, though, I mean, no one's actually finished a game of Monopoly to win. So
I don't
like
know
that he
how
says that.
I've never understood how Monopoly it was so popular because it's like I think I played it like 3 times in my life. It's so boring.
It always sounds fun to start, and then you just quit.
Yep.
Because
you're like, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Especially the more players you have, and it just goes back and forth.
Right.
I mean, you got to make some really good trades and put houses and hotels on the big stuff.
Yep.
Otherwise, it just like goes round and around.
It's constant.
But I love that too, where he's like, not many people have finished this. That's a great point too, right? He's like, a lot of people start it, but don't finish it. Sound familiar, and it goes to the Bible,
right?
And so this whole talk about these iterations and how people take something and make it their own, but look how these things are all the same.
Well, then he hits like this button, and like this curtain kind of comes, pulls back, and it's got all these different pictures, and he's like, this person was, there's 12 or 15 people that were born on December 25th. There's this person that was, pushed down the river or something. I think that's, you hit something with your foot.
Yeah. We were getting static a minute ago when you were hitting something. Yeah.
There, you fix it.
Weird.
So like he basically says that there's all these different, and that's always kind of the Catholicism way, or Christianity, I guess, where it's like, here's a little bit of Nordic stuff, here's a little bit of Greek stuff, here's a little bit of Roman stuff. That's all kind of,
and it's another form of the marketing, right?
Exactly.
They've crowdsourced and done testing in a way, and they've cherry picked the best parts and assembled it into this religion. That took off in a way that the other ones didn't.
Correct.
And so he basically comes down to, do you believe or do you not believe? How strong is your faith after all this stuff that we've talked about? Because he's like, there's 2 doors here, and he writes belief and disbelief on them. And he's like, and she's and I can't remember which one, but she's like,
I think Braxton goes to belief and the other one goes to...
they're both...
Barnes goes to belief and Paxton goes to disbelief.
Yeah.
Yes, because she's like, our very gracious guest is letting us leave. We should listen to him. I'm going to go to disbelief. And Barnes is like, no, because no matter even what he says, I still believe there is a God. Do you still believe in certain things? She's like, well, so we have belief.
Right.
We're going to go in this door.
But it didn't matter.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
Well, we end up seeing, but when you looked at it at first, I thought something really creepy was going to be
they
behind
do
the first
open
door.
the first door, and all you see is Sophie
It's her
Thatcher's reaction.
Yeah,
it's like,
and so you're like, oh
God.
But then we see the second door, and it goes down to a basement. She's like, that can't lead out. That goes downstairs.
Right.
But then eventually, when she does the whole belief thing, and you look through, and it's like, well, that's also a basement stairwell. And later in the movie, spoilers, but to jump ahead, you see there's like 2 things leading to the same.
It was going to go to the same
basement,
place.
yeah.
So they go down,
and he shuts the
and
door.
He shuts the door behind him, and he does it. Oh, the question that he asks while they're in the living room is like, "How do you feel about polygamy?"
Yeah,
and Sophie Thatcher's character is like, no, it's part of the church, and we, whatever,
Part of its history.
Yeah, and then the other one's like, nope. Not for me.
Yeah.
So,
but it's interesting though, because again, he brings up so many good points, and obviously, this is what. The best villains are the ones where you go like, I understand where they're coming from.
You're onto something.
Yeah.
His methods and obviously what he does are not good, but the best villains, the meaty ones, are the ones that you listen to and you're like, holy crap, he's got some good points. I see what he's trying to do here. He makes so many good points, and that's the thing. It's like, well, if the church was founded and Joseph Smith had all these wives, like that's what you believe in, right? So now how do you decide that that's not good?
But then he kind of, I mean, he tears into Joseph Smith, which I do think is interesting because I know, I've seen enough docs on Mormonism because I do find that religion kind of fascinating in a certain way, where the theory is that Joseph Smith only said that polygamy was okay. It was so he could have sex with as many people as possible.
That's I mean, that's not a very difficult
conclusion
to come to. But then and then I guess Barnes is like, well, that was done to repopulate the church. It was done because it was necessary. Now it's not. But it's like, but your religion was founded on this.
Right.
How do you get to say like, oh, we don't need to do that part? Well, what other parts of the religion don't you need to do anymore?
Right.
And that's the problem with religion is the picking and choosing. Just like, don't eat pork or touch pork on Sundays or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, well, why do you get to choose to follow that? It's in your book.
But then they're okay.
It's the whole book.
But then they're okay with a pig skin.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And eating, and all that. So why do people get to pick and choose? It's like, well, if you believe this book, it's all or not, right? Belief or disbelief.
Yep.
And so Barnes ends up saying like, well, I'm picking and choosing essentially, but that's his point is it's like, why do you get to do that? You can question everything then if you go down the line, and you should be questioning things. And that's what this movie's trying to say,
right?
Is that, don't just follow blindly, because you should be questioning why these things don't make sense and why they're wrong and all that stuff. So anyway, so they're down there in this creepy basement. It's like
it's a dungeon.
Yeah,
I don't know how else to describe
circular,
it. It's got like rain coming in on it, and there's a table.
There's
like
always
those,
rain coming in.
It's like those old houses where the basement is dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like it's not a. It is an unfinished
basement. Yeah. So at this point, the girls have I think Sophie Thatcher's character has taken
Barnes
has taken like a letter opener is what it looks like, and she puts it into she gives it to Paxton and says, "Look, we need to come up with a code word, and when you hear me say it, you're gonna stab him as hard as you can." And she's like, she's like, the code word is magic underwear.
Yeah. Barnes is like very.
She is
strong. She's strong-willed. Like
she's
Barnes
the final
is,
girl.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
then that is why
but not
kind of though.
But not really.
But also not.
But she's like a head. Well, she's like the head fake final girl.
She is.
But she does act like the one that's like going to take charge and stand up.
And when you
she stands up
think
to him.
about it, when you think about the traditional final girl, every single time in those movies, the final girl, you could think of Jamie Lee Curtis or any of those characters
in the good Halloween movies.
But even in the original idea, the Nancy Thompson, Laurie Strode, all of those.
You're gonna lose all your horror credit if you can't name more.
I know I
Come
can,
on,
but it's
Black
like
Christmas. What's her name?
Oh man,
No.
Olivia Hussey. Like that's the characters, but she's not
Take
really.
Joe's horror
I gotta
card
tell
away.
you, spoilers for
the
Brett.
final girl's like Laurie Strode. Tom's like, I could have said Laurie Strode. Jesus.
They start meek and mild, and they're smart, but they're not,
and they're also the pure ones.
Correct. And when we get to the end, that character has changed. Like that character has had to, become somebody else. They trick us here, and I think it's kind of fucking brilliant.
Yeah,
is because you're with Sophie, you're with Paxton or Barnes the whole time. Like she's the one. Like she's smart. She's gonna get us out of here. She's got the plan.
Yeah.
She's got that
bit of a head fake there.
She's got birth control though. She ain't pure.
That's exact. But that's the thing. That means she's had sex.
Right.
Yeah. So in slasher lore, you're out.
Yeah. So anyway, what is this the part where like they're like, we can't get out, there's no way to get out of here, and then does the first prophet come?
No, he says there's yes
the first prophet,
which I thought was terrifying.
Well, okay, so here's the interesting thing. He's like, I'm making a blueberry pie and my wife's in the kitchen.
Do you believe
that
I'm making
you have all these clues that are there that say I'm not, but you believe me?
No, he's asking, do you believe that
even after you've seen all this stuff that
got
says
all these
I'm
clues,
not, you've seen the candle that's really that's blueberry scented.
My wife never comes.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's interesting now. So this woman dressed in all these robes comes down the stairs, creepy woman, creepy stairs, creepy pie with a blueberry pie, and then that's what makes you question, like, holy shit, he did have a pie.
Yeah, he did. He
so
hasn't
you're like,
lied.
what do we believe? Right? So he hasn't lied, and that's why I hate the whole thing about him lying that one time. But unless I have to think about it, where there was a locking thing, but he said no. He said I can't open it, which was the lie.
Yeah.
So, but she comes down with a pie, and then like, well, is that his wife? When like in a way, so
Right.
I'm like, oh my god, dude, what?
When he asks about multiple wives,
right?
I was like, there's
and now he's got
multiple
all
women.
Exactly. So anyway, so it's just brilliant. So she comes down, it's just so creepy. Puts a pie that's like mangled and it's dark and water's dripping. It's just gross on this table full of water that's been dripping all there, and then he
still got the marks from where Jason Biggs was fucking it.
Yeah, it definitely looked like he had a couple of rounds with that
pie.
thing. So anyway, but he's like, so this is the prophet, and what you're going to see, I need you here to record evidence of this miracle happening.
Yes.
And so, but again, this is so brilliant because he's doing the bait and switch of like what religions want you to believe, but it's just,
misdirection.
It's so smart. He's a magician, exactly. Which that line is so smart. But anyway, so she eats this pie. He's like, this is a blueberry pie, your typical sugar, flour, blueberries, of course. And then there's
wolfsbane,
and
poison,
something
else,
right? And he's like, she is going to eat it, and then you are going to see a miracle, witness a miracle.
You're going to see her die, and she's going to resurrect.
Yeah. So she eats it. She does die, and he's like, check for a pulse, and it's so creepy because it's like, something's gonna happen, someone's gonna jump or whatever.
Well, he keeps
creepy scene.
Well, now he's playing Creep, an acoustic version of Creep through like this little like hole in the wall.
Yeah.
It irritated
phonograph
me that they played the radio edit version where they say very special.
Yeah.
Of special. I'm like, come on,
it's rated R. You can get away with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's very creepy, and there's they're up to this dead body, and then it jumps and like, oh, she's alive. No, that's just the body doing whatever.
Right.
But anyway, it's very creepy, and then all of a sudden the doorbell, ding dong, and it's
no. He comes down. Doesn't he come down first?
That's the second time I thought.
Is it?
Because he leads her back.
You're right.
Yeah,
because when they come back down, they're like, she moved.
But, right.
Yeah, you're right.
So the way they're distracted is because they're like, there he is. This is the guy who's looking for us. And so they're trying to yell at the door. There's like a crack under the door. They're making noise. He shuts the door. No one can hear him. And then here's Topher Grace, and he's like, have you seen these girls? No one's.
Also, there's like a big enough hole in the door between the door and the floor.
Reach through it.
Yeah. And they're reaching for the carpet, which have matches on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, can you pull that a little faster? Like once you get it, they
were trying not to get his attention.
Yeah, but he's out of the room.
Yeah,
he's
but
out
he's
of the room.
like coming, but he's like keeps coming back and forth and stuff, and doesn't want to.
Right.
But I like the way they do it. Cause you're like, oh my god, there's matches. They keep showing you Chekhov's matches.
Yep.
But then when he leaves the room and they show them, and the camera works very good in this movie.
It is very good.
Going in and out of the maze. Just there's a ton of really inventive shots. But you're like, oh, they've got the matches. They're gonna get them. And they show her and her hand under the door, and they pan forever to the matches. And I just thought that was cool because with the different perspectives, you didn't know how far away it was.
Yeah.
And then they show you, and it's that daunting like pullback of like, oh my god,
they're
it's all
so
the way
far
over
away.
there. So they got to pull the rug, and they're trying to do that in between him walking around the house and talking and then he comes back because he's like, nope, haven't seen him. He starts to come back to the office, and all of a sudden it's like ding dong.
Right. And we're like, we
oh
got
my
him.
god, the guy probably saw the bikes.
Topher
or
Grace is
whatever.
gonna die.
Right. And this was a great misdirect. And so meanwhile, they're like pulling the things and trying to get to the matches, and they cut.
Well,
to
he
him.
even has a line where he's like, I would be remiss if I didn't ask.
Yes.
And I was like,
Got him.
tell
Got
him.
him.
And then he's like, do you have one of these pamphlets? And I was like, God dang it.
Right. And he's like, no, I don't, but I will take that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Goodbye.
And I do like that again in this scene, while they're scrambling to get the matches, like the matches hit the door and they're too tall.
Yeah.
Like they can't get them out, so she like kind of knocks it over and
has to push the thing and
pull
do that all.
pull a
yeah.
bunch of matches out.
And this is another great pullback where then they show the house, and then Topher Grace walks back out the gate.
Yeah.
Because you're like, how could he pass and not see the bikes? And it pulls back, and then all of a sudden out the gate, and there's no bikes.
There's no
there.
bikes. No bikes.
It's a really good shot.
It is.
A lot of good visual storytelling here.
Yeah, there's a lot of like we kind of bang on like tracking shots, and there's a lot of tracking shots in this, but it's not one, like a shot from above. It's a lot of like rotating shots. Like that's the tracking shot that they do a lot of in this one, just to give you an idea of like maybe like the size of this house or lack thereof, I guess.
Yeah. So they're downstairs, and they're like, they've got the matches, and they're trying to start a fire and all this.
They're trying
stuff.
to light a coat on fire to.
I love the way that Hugh Grant does come downstairs after this, and it's so nonchalant. He like just takes the match.
He's
and
like, hey,
lights
I'll
it.
take that, please.
It's so. I mean, that's just so great that they're struggling and they're nervous and they're trying to.
This is the scene.
He just,
this is the scene where.
Also, kids that age, how often have they actually used matches?
So I think that gives you an idea as to Sophie Thatcher's character, as to what she may have been through. Like she does have the wherewithal to know how to like. And she can't get it.
Right.
She gets like one or two of them, But she knows that I can strike this on whatever.
Anything rough potentially.
So the other character does kind of, she's like, that she moved.
Yeah.
And Sophie Thatcher's like, no, she didn't. She's like, I'm telling you, her face is in a different
head moved
position.
A different direction, right? I saw the same thing.
When we left, her face was in that pie. Like that is a different. She has moved.
Yeah, but I guess right before Hugh Grant comes down there, but they cut back from trying to light the thing.
This is
and
a fucking shot that was terrifying.
The shot is great, and so the camera pans, swings around them, and you see them right up near the camera, and in the background's the table. The table, the dead body was on, and it's empty. Yeah. And then the camera moves a little more, and right over their shoulders, of course.
But it doesn't move quick. It is they keep moving slowly, and you can see the silhouette of like the veil.
And then it's like woman, blueberry all over her face. Very creepy, gross looking.
It's the only jump scare in the movie.
I would think. I think that
that's the only one.
There's not many. Yeah.
No. There's not, but this is a good one.
Yeah.
This is a
they
well
used
done
it well,
one.
and then she says some stuff, and I couldn't really hear it, but then they recite it to you, so I'm like, good.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
couldn't
really
understand
sure.
a word she was saying.
It was quiet. And
basically,
creepy
the only thing I heard was none of it's real.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing was, he's like, what'd she say? Because like, we're recording this. You've witnessed a miracle. And she says what she said, that she saw like white light, blinding light or something, and it's not real. And so he's like, okay, well, there it is. And so he walks her back up out this little like this little door in the hallway.
Sophie Thatcher's character had seen a door, but she couldn't get it open.
So she walks out through that back to wherever. So anyway, so then that's when he's like, okay, well, so this is what's going on. You've seen this miracle. Do you believe it now, what you've witnessed? And they're both just like, I don't know what I saw, because we don't know. We can't trust you. Like, we don't know what that was.
They talk about there was the fast food stuff where they're trying to figure out which is the best fast food. And I do like that they both say, we don't talk about Taco Bell. Yeah. And I was like, that's...
So which one sponsored it? I'm going to guess Wendy's, but there were a lot of names. Because I'm trying to think, well, which one gave them money?
Right.
And I feel like Wendy's came out as number one. They agreed, so I'm like, okay, so that's probably Wendy's
once they started
money.
listing stuff, I was like, well, they're not wrong. Like, that is the way to go. And Sophie Thatcher says, do you know why we don't talk about Taco Bell? And she gives this whole thing, and basically she had eaten Taco Bell, and she almost died from E. coli poisoning. And she's like, this is what I saw. And Hugh Grant kind of like sits down and he's listening to her and he's kind of smirking. And she's like, everything that person said is bull. All of it's bull. She's like, it's your brain just firing out. Like, that's why you see all this stuff. And as you think, this is the scene where you think they've got
magic
him.
Underwear.
And she says magic.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you see her face change and you see blood.
But I think it goes to Hugh Grant first, because you think
all you see is faces.
Right. But you're thinking like, oh, they got him, because it's just Hugh Grant staring. But then they cut back to Barnes.
And she's cut her. Hugh Grant has slit her throat.
And you see it goes back to Hugh Grant. He's got his big box cutter that he's had.
And she's just like leaking blood.
And that was a great. I mean, I did not expect her to go.
No,
right? That's
the
one you
don't.
The way
they build her up.
Yeah,
it's
great.
They build her up as the
Psycho.
hero of this. Well, kind of. Psycho is different only because of the stature of Janet Leigh.
I know, but it's still
you're not wrong.
It's still your main character, and you think like she's the one that's strong, and they're gonna build her up. Like, that's a great head fake.
That is a very good head
fake. It's kind of a head fake that's lost the time because the movie's so famous. Like, people forget what. Also,
it's Drew Barrymore.
She's like, that's probably her most famous role. Like, she was a bigger star. Like, at the time. You know what I mean? To where,
but that's for sure now her most famous role.
Right. So it's like
doing what, 20 minutes of work?
Yeah, and so it's like I think the impact has been a little lost to time.
I think
of that kill in Psycho.
I think even up until Scream, like up until they killed Drew Barrymore in that first 10 minutes.
That was definitely an homage to
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've got people that are named after, people in Psycho. So it's like I mean, the guy's name is Loomis.
Yeah.
So and that's not after Dr. Loomis, like it's the boyfriend from Psycho.
Yeah.
They end up you think they kill Sophie Thatcher, and you're just like, well, now this one is on her own, like this meek little naive thing.
But then he's also like, oh no, she'll be fine, right? Because you believe in miracles, and
correct. You witnessed a miracle.
You
believe,
saw this. Right? She'll come back, right?
Yeah, and I do wonder if.
And it's so creepy the way he's holding her as she's bleeding out. He's like, "That's okay, she'll be back." Like, man, it's just so his performance is so good.
He does have a moment where he's like, he's kind of shocked that she doesn't come back.
Right.
And
but then he's like, oh, there must be a reason for that.
Right. And then
which again is religion, right? If you question religion, there's always some
if you would just
interesting
believed
answer.
enough.
Right. Yeah.
And so he cuts into her arm.
And it's so the camera doesn't cut though. It's it's just showing a full body shot of him and her, and he's holding her, she's bled out, and he's like, oh well, and he picks up her arm and just starts cutting into the blood everywhere.
And then
he's digging.
He pulls in, he's like, oh nope, that's a vein, and puts that back in.
It's great. Yeah.
And then
he pulls out the big vein.
And then he pulls out the birth control
Yeah.
and puts it down, and he was like, look, if she was into this church as much as she is, why would she have this?
No, he says, oh, this is a simulation.
Oh yeah, that's
he
right.
He says,
that's
you know
right.
what? Do you know what this is? This is controlling her.
Uh-huh. And that's why she didn't come back.
Which just sounds like the most crazy psychobabble. But you know what? A lot of religious stuff, if you're not religious, sounds like a lot of crazy psychobabble, doesn't it?
Well, because she even says, like, your Matrix theory, like, it can't be tested, but neither can religion.
Right. I love that. So, like, we have so many things in religion that are accepted, right? You don't question it because, oh, it's religion. It's been around for hundreds of years. And then you have crazy whack job conspiracy theories, and we all think they're crazy whack jobs, which they are. But why don't we question the other people that same way? This movie just brings up, I love the juxtaposition of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you get to the reveal of, like, what the true religion is, you're just like, yeah, that tracks.
Bingo, right?
Yeah,
I love
tracks.
it. Yeah, I love it. So anyway, so he's like, yeah, so this is what happened. He draws, he's like got a whiteboard or something. He's drawing things out. He's like, this, clearly the only answer is this is a simulation. And she could not pass through the simulation because of her birth control device. Right. She wasn't pure, all this, but you are, and you'll be able to. So what you need to do is you're going to die, you're going to eat the pie, and then you'll come back and you'll pass through and you'll wake up and you'll see, I can give you the gift of what the prophet saw. I can give you this.
Yes.
And then, and
she remembers something that Barnes said, where she's like, question him. If you question him, he's going to lose it. And she says, she's like, you almost had it. You almost had it. And
she's like, I don't think the prophet came back to life. I think you switched the bodies.
Yeah.
And this is when it gets a little bit like, I don't know how all of a sudden she became Sherlock Holmes.
That's good.
With her naivete and her, like, I get that she's questioning things, but good Lord, she had the puzzle together.
She figured it out.
Yeah.
And I just wish that they maybe could have given that to a little more inquisitive character that maybe.
Yeah, suddenly she's Columbo.
Yeah. So,
right.
But anyway, but he's like, you switch the body.
One more question.
Yeah.
But he's like, but if I did that, then there must be another door, and I don't see one. He's going around all the walls and knocking. He's like, I don't know, I'm not doing so well so far. Yeah. And then she's looking around and she looks under the table and looking where the water's going or whatever. And she's like, she flips the table, pushes something up, and then all of a sudden opens like a handle.
Yeah.
And she goes, I think the body's down there. He goes, oh,
maybe.
Well, there's only one. White, to prove it, you have to
go. And when they do that, and in my head I was like, this is Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Well, they show Dante.
They do.
Yeah.
Well, not until later.
Oh. Okay.
But
I thought they went by it as okay, but yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, well, that's what this is.
Yeah.
Like we're just gonna get lower and lower and lower.
Mm-hmm.
And she even says, she's like, you took our bikes. Like when you came back from getting the pie, your hair was wet, and you had this, and there's like, you wanted me to have the key, because you knew that I was the one that was gonna get.
The point is, she's like, I'm standing right here because it's exactly where you wanted me.
Yes.
Which I think all leads into control in religions. They say all these things and do all these things because they're setting people up to exactly how they want them to be, right? It's all about control. He controlled her.
Yeah.
That's exactly what religions do.
Yes.
It's just his whole point. So anyway, she goes down there.
She's like, fine. And she goes.
She goes, and then he just shuts the door. Doesn't even say anything. I don't think. Just shuts her down there.
Right.
And so she looks. She's got her cell phone flashlight, which obviously still works on battery. And she looks, and there's a body laying right there.
And then she's going through door after door.
She has to keep going through. And I loved. There was something so creepy. The set design. I mean, all the doors and the symbols.
Yeah,
and
she's got all kinds of like weird religious
skulls
stuff
and maps, and it's just.
It's very.
It looks amazing the way they designed this creepy cavern.
It reminds me a lot of Barbarian when they're walking down that. So
there's door after door after door, and then finally.
She gets the bike lock, and she realizes, oh, I've got the key.
Yeah.
So he
switched the keys and the coats, and she says that earlier, but he gave her the key on purpose, and that's why Larry's like, you wanted to give me the key. Right. Everything is by design.
Correct. So she
unlocks it.
They go. She finds like this weird room that's cold, and there's spray cans everywhere.
There's cages,
and in these cages are these women,
all these prophet, that look like the prophet, all these women,
right? And then he shows back up, and he was like, look, they don't want to leave, like they want to be here.
He's like, why are they here? Because they let me,
right? And
why do I why do they let me do this to them, kind of a thing?
And it's very it kind of, I got like Tusk vibes, where basically when he says like, you have to dress up like a walrus for whatever, and what's his name, Justin Long, just kind
Barbarian.
of that's right, kind of goes along. He's like, all right, it's weird, but all right. But it's like he put himself there. He put himself in and now these women.
So clearly he got these women that had some kind of belief, and he was able to control them, and he promised them that they would be able to come back to life and do all that stuff. And so they follow him. They're blind. I mean, this is basically an allegory for these are religious followers. Why would you be in a cage and let someone poison you and do whatever, but it's the promise of the afterlife or promise of seeing the meaning of life or whatever. And that's that's religion for you. Why would you do all this stuff with blind faith and just let people do this to you over and over
And
again?
I think the scene that's kind of telling is he's clipping this gal's.
Oh, and this is really creepy. Yeah, he's like giving them a little water, keeping them alive, all this stuff. And then this woman, he grabs her hand and just cuts the finger off.
He clips her fingernails first. You're like, all right, well, he's being a little somewhat caring. And then he slices her. Yeah. So he gets up close to her, and she I think they're back to chest. Like he's kind of like over her, and he keeps kind of making these jokes. He's like, and then he says magic underwear, and she stabs him in the throat, and you're like, holy and it's a great callback to the line, because he's kind of antagonizing her, and she hears the code word and she reacts, and she stabs him in the throat, and she takes off and she runs back upstairs, and when she gets back up to the dungeon kind of area.
Oh, but that's the answer we should say. I mean, we've kind of hinted at, but he says here, he's like, so did you find out? Because he says behind that door is the one true religion. Yeah. And when he sees all this and like what we just explained, he's like, what is the true religion? Control. And that's...
Yes. And she runs back upstairs, and she's trying to get back out, and as she thinks
is this where it pulls back and shows the shot of his maze he's been crafting, but then there's a real person in it, and then she whips out the door, and it's just really cool because it pans up from the maze and you see her in the maze, but then you see her come out the door in one tracking shot as it pans. Super cool.
It's insanely good.
Yeah, really good.
So she gets back to the dungeon because the doors
she pushes the door to block him, right?
I don't think so, because he comes, I don't know, where the hell does he come from?
She goes back down.
I got really confused here how she ended up back in the basement.
There's two doors, remember?
Yeah.
But she covered one door, but then I guess she ends up going back down the other because she's trying to get out. She's like, I can't get out the front door or whatever. She couldn't escape somehow. So she went back down to the basement, I guess, to try to get out the hole in the top.
This is because you're right, Tom. I was confused. Like, how the hell did we get here?
Yeah.
Like, what happened? But
it's very dreamlike.
It is very dreamlike.
Where it's like,
which makes me think. Well, we'll get to the end, but I have a theory. She gets back into the cellar, and Hugh Grant like corners her and stabs her in the gut, and she kind of like stumbles backwards and collapses, and he's like gurgling blood or whatever, and he was like, pray. Praying doesn't really do anything. Like, it's just...
I like this line too. She's like, even though people probably know that it's BS, and whatever the way she says it, we do that for each other. And I think it's beautiful that people will think about other people.
Like, are you going to pray for me?
Yeah.
And she just starts praying, and he kind of like crawls over to her and lays
his box cutter still he's got.
But it does have a moment where he kind of like
he lays on her. Yeah. But then he pulls up and he's got the box cutter and he's about to slice her throat.
And then wham! Yeah. And I remember I verbally said, fuck yes. Because I was like, all right, she's going to be, So then we see Sophie Thatcher, and she had taken this piece of, there was a piece of wood that had nails in it. That she had like put off to the side.
Yeah, Chekhov's.
Yeah.
Well,
you see it for a second, and they never reference it again.
Right,
and
but
then,
it's like, man, I remember that. Oh crap, that was there, wasn't it?
And she hits him in the head, and he dies, and then she ends up dying.
So, but that's the thing, though. It's like she kind of came back to life.
Right.
Kinda.
We did have a resurrection.
We did have a resurrection because her throat was cut.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that it could just be a head fake or whatever, because clearly she dies right after. But it's like, man, but the movie keeps you questioning now, because the way it ends, it doesn't end like, see, it's all about control and religions, even though that is a very good analysis and something that like I believe with the religion. But in this movie world, it's like, but wait a minute,
right?
Because
what just happened?
And I love that. So the movie doesn't completely like, it brings up the questions, it gives you very good evidence and all this stuff, but it doesn't end with fuck you religion. It makes you like, wow, you have faith in something, and now you saw something, and
Right.
you can still believe in something.
Yeah, like
without-
it's really not anti-religion for
No.
as much as the rhetoric
Yeah.
can be. Like you can take this either way.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very thoughtful, and I
it's-
think the
yeah.
ending
It's
lands
thought-provoking.
the ending lands more on religion or belief than it. I think of more like spiritual than religious. You know what
That's
I mean?
fair.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know she was very religious, but maybe she's moving towards more of a belief in something. But I don't have to follow everything to the letter of the law. I mean,
Right.
It's open to interpretation what she will do from here on out, but. She had a belief still. She prayed for him, even though she said it was probably BS and all that. But she's still doing these things.
She saw a resurrection
and then
of
she got
sorts.
and then she got a miracle.
Yep.
And then so anyway, so she gets out. She ends up pushing out that window, like
Yep.
Chekhov's window. It's like okay, she could fit through it. And it's now we saw it's been snowing and it's cold out, and she's like just making her way through the forest.
Yeah, the sun's out now.
And then a
But
butterfly.
earlier in the movie, they were asking like, when you die, what are you going to come back as? And this.
Well, because he talks about that theory about is a man dreaming of being a butterfly or a butterfly dreaming of being a man.
but
It all kind of ties
but
into
yeah. You're right. And I don't think she made it out of there. I
think that was
I
all
think
made
she
up?
died in that cellar.
It's interesting because she's outside and she sees a butterfly land on her fingertips. Just
Now
like
you could say that that's Sophie Thatcher.
that's what I mean.
You
I
could
think
say it that way,
But that's what I think you're supposed to see or what she believed. But then they cut back to her hand and there's no butterfly.
Right.
But you can question, did it fly away? Was it ever really there? But remember, it was Paxton was the one that said she would come back as a butterfly. She's the like sweet one that was like, I'm going to be a butterfly.
Yeah.
Whatever. Right? Like Barnes didn't say that.
No, Barnes did
So
not
that
say
was
that.
Paxton's dream or belief that when she dies. So was that her dying and
Right.
coming back as right? So I just love that there's so many different ways to question that. And, the movie ends.
And that's how it ends. Yeah, I think
Very bleak ending for our characters.
Yeah.
But a thought-provoking journey.
And I think that's the thing about horror, right? Is like you can tell. I think traditional audiences don't want to leave a movie without a happy ending, right? Like I think
for long-time general audiences,
yes, they want to leave.
Want the happy ending.
And I do appreciate that sometimes in horror you don't get it.
Yeah.
It's very rare. You get the final jump scare or you get whatever. But I think recently we've seen that horror movies are like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
They'll
I disagree.
Yeah.
They're more likely to go with the bleak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Smile 2. Does not have a good ending.
No.
Like, it's a very bleak ending for
the entire
Smile 2.
world,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Yeah, this is fantastic. Like, I think I'm glad that the guys, they didn't write the other Quiet Places, did they?
Just the first
Just the
one,
first one?
yeah.
Did they direct the first one?
No, John
Oh,
Krasinski.
John
did.
Krasinski
Krasinski.
did. That's right.
Yeah.
So good for them for getting some more work.
I mean,
think.
they've got quite a few credits, but I think Quiet Place was the biggest one.
Okay.
Lost and Found, For Always, Her Summer, University Heights, The Bride Wore Blood, Nightlight, A Quiet Place in 2018, Haunt, 65.
Oh, Haunt's not bad.
The Boogeyman. I never saw
Boogeyman's
that one.
not good.
Okay, and then Heretic. So.
Okay.
Both these actresses are former Mormons.
Oh, wow.
Mormons.
Oh, that's
Well,
interesting.
that's fantastic. That
I
wow.
wonder, yeah,
There's some credibility there.
absolutely.
Jeez.
Yeah, go watch that Andrew Garfield
Under the Banner of Heaven.
Oh man, it's so good.
It's a little slow at first,
It
but
is.
it pays off.
It gives a very good idea of like maybe what that world is like, especially if you're a police officer.
And especially in the fundamentalist
Oh,
LDS,
yeah.
like that
Oh,
gets real weird real
Yeah,
fast.
it's got Wyatt Russell in it. It's your buddy,
There you go.
who's great in it.
He's great.
He's
good.
great in it.
Oh,
He's a very punchable face, and he puts it to good use.
There you
Big
go. That's his
time.
his specialty for
Yeah.
sure.
So yeah, this is go see this.
fantastic.
Go watch this.
Horror
this
has
is great.
really been some. I mean, The Substance, Smile 2, this. I mean, we've had so many this year. It's like, it's
Yeah.
just, I'm glad that they're not only coming out during Halloween.
I was
now,
saying we're
right?
getting
We
Nosferatu.
have horror every single month because that's what's selling tickets.
Yeah.
And there's some of the best movies coming out. I think my favorite movies this year have been
That's
horror
what I'm saying,
movies.
because you can take chances.
Yeah.
You can take big chances.
I never was into the slasher stuff growing up. I didn't watch a ton. I liked Evil Dead and all that, but like that was not my favorite genre, but it really has become one of my favorites.
It's great.
With the thought-provoking films we're
Yeah, I like
seeing.
it when it's thoughtful.
Yeah,
Like
A24, Neon.
Yeah.
Who are some of the other ones? There's
I mean,
just
Blumhouse is doing so. There's some every
I'm
once in a
over
while.
Blumhouse.
Every
they
once in a
started
while.
off strong, but
Well, yeah.
But the Blumhouse movies were never really that thought-provoking. They were like, oh, this is good classic horror scares.
It was
and
like
thrills.
good concepts, well
Yeah.
done,
Right.
but it wasn't necessarily
Never was
philosophical.
A24.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
A24 is where it's at for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time.
Well, anyway, I guess that's it for this one. Let's go around the table and everyone can say where to find them.
This is Joe. You can follow me on the Twitter at JoeyButts, BUTTS21.
This is Kevin. Follow me on Twitter at KevinRBrackett.
And this is Tom. You can follow me on Threads at Tom O'Keefe Jr. or on Facebook at facebook.com/Tom O'Keefe. You can find the show online at facebook.com/Real Spoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group, and of course, don't forget our Patreon at patreon.com/Real Spoilers. So that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, Groberg goes to Idaho and marries Jean.
Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice.